Hi, everyone. This is Victoria from Adelaide Capital, and today I'm joined by Marc-André Pelletier, the CEO of Bonterra Resources, as well as Cesar Gonzalez, the Chairman of Bonterra. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Bonterra, Bonterra is a brownfields gold exploration company with over 3 million ounces defined between three 100% owned deposits within the Abitibi Greenstone Belt in Quebec. They trade in Canada on the TSX Venture under the ticker BTR, as well as in the US on the OTCQX under the symbol BONXF. Last week they issued a press release highlighting some of the challenges that the mining industry is currently facing as it relates to inflation as well as contractor availability, and how this is reshaping their development plans to ensure the most economic development scenario possible. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Cesar and as well to Marc-André to take us through it.
Thanks, Victoria, and thanks everyone for joining on this call. We want to give people the opportunity, shareholders, the opportunity to ask questions and have them answered by primarily Marc-André, for anything technical and details around our plans going forward with regards to the development of our assets. If you take a step back and look at the industry today, it's very different than the industry at the beginning of the year. We're almost at the end of this year, and not just our industry, but the whole world for that matter. There are some dynamics that have taken place that I don't think most people predicted. Shortages in labor, increases in inflation that are multi-decade highs. And specifically in northern Quebec, where we operate, there is these issues they're more exacerbated, they're more dramatic. We at Bonterra have been positioning the company to develop our assets to become a producer again. And we went out and hired Marc-André in the latter part of 2021. In fact, I think it's about a year, Marc-André, since we made that announcement in November of 21 that you were going to be joining in January of 22. And, he has taken on the leadership position in this company, primarily on the technical side, where he has a lot of expertise. And in the process of transitioning from a PEA to a PFS on our open pit project at Barry, we have realized that it makes more sense to take a step back, to finish the infill drilling of the underground at Barry, where there are over 1 million ounces, twice the grade, and to see if this deposit, when it's restarted again, should be restarted as a combination of an open pit and an underground, just the underground, an open pit with an underground on a seasonal basis. Marc-André has done a number of scenarios at other mines, and we are going to be as flexible as possible to make sure that when we do restart production, that it makes sense, that it is economic, that is in the best interest of the company. And this is just part of that process. We've seen other junior mining companies go head on into a situation where they eventually failed, and we are not about to make that decision. We are going to reevaluate where we are every step of the way and try to make the right decision at that point in time. So with that said, I will hand it over to Marc-André, who will provide an update on the two major points of the press release we put out last week, which were the cost-saving initiatives, which have now largely been completed. There are a few other initiatives that he's executing on that will help us save money going forward, or better yet, reallocate those funds to the development of Barry, and then also to talk about the PFS and where it stands and what our thinking is about development going forward, specific to Barry.
Thanks, Cesar, and thank you, Victoria, as well for the invitation this morning. Good morning, everyone. Like Cesar mentioned, I joined the company over a year ago as the CEO in January, and one of the first things I did is basically look at our portfolio and establish the right strategy for the company to get to the production stage. And it became very obvious to me that the Barry project was by far the most advanced of our project. We had measured resources in the pit, and we had some indicated and mostly inferred in the underground deposit. As you may know, we have mining lease there, mining rights. So I believe that that project was much closer to production in our portfolio. The pit became the quickest option because, again, because of the quality of the resource, there's not much drilling required, and we thought we could bring that asset into production fairly quick. Since the release of the PEA in June, we basically immediately started the PFS, and our intention was to to advance the project on the technical side as much as possible, and in the order to reduce the risk. Like Cesar mentioned, I mean, a company like Bonterra to become a junior gold producer, there's just no room for mistake. We need to be we need to execute, we need to be perfect, and we need to be profitable. 6 months it took after the after we published the PEA that we realized due to the inflation, the shortage of labor in the Abitibi region. There's lots of mining activities going on here, and every single company is actually short of people or contractors.
And not just gold, correct, Marc-André? Now we have a lithium play in northern Quebec that is also drawing a lot of attention, labor, capital.
True, Cesar. And it's the reality. Everybody is looking for people. There are delays getting equipment, parts, and time costs money. We all know that. So we made the decision to put a pause on the PFS on the Barry open pit. It's a very responsible approach that Bonterra is taking. It's the right thing to do. It makes sense to stop, take a pause and take some time to reevaluate the project. Our strategy has been the same. We want to move the Barry project toward production. And I would like to mention that Barry open pit contains only 10% of the resource at Barry. 90% of the resource is actually below the pit. And for all all resources categories, we're talking about 1.2 million ounces. So significant amount of gold. In August, as we were still working on the PFS, we started an infill program on the upper half of the underground deposit at Barry. We have established a 125,000 meters drill program at Barry to better define those underground resources. We expect we're going to drill about 25,000 to 30,000 meters this year, and we're going to carry on next year with the infill program. So we basically slightly changed our strategy. I mean, our immediate focus is on the underground. We're going to continue like that. We would like to eventually, as we're getting more drill results, update our MRE and eventually proceed to further economical analysis. In terms of drilling, we have published a press release 2 weeks ago with some very good results. One hole turned out about 80 grams per ton over 2.1 meters. So significant intersects at Barry underground, and certainly we are going to continue to release some good results in the next couple of months. So that's basically where we are at Barry. Just to recap, we're taking a pause on the PFS. It's the right thing to do. We're taking our responsibility, and we continue to focus on the Barry underground, which is a much larger portion of the deposit, and we are working very hard to bring the underground deposit to the next stage.
Thanks, Marc-André. Thanks, Cesar. So I'm just going to remind everyone that there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So if you do have any questions, you can just type them in there and I'll get to them. I just wanted to start off, you guys do talk about in the release looking at a larger scale development. Do you guys have any idea on, what kind of throughput rates you guys would be looking at?
Yes, we the throughput rate is very preliminary at this stage, but we see a throughput at around 1,000 tons, 1,200 tons per day, which will bring the yearly production, considering the grade at Barry underground, about 4.55 grams per ton. That's what we think we can get, and we bring the total production between 50 to 60,000 ounces a year.
Okay.
Yeah, and Victoria, it's important to note that the throughput, the bottleneck is the mill.
Right.
So the mill is presently permitted for 800 tons per day, and we are going to permit it for up to 1,800 tons per day, just under 2,000 tons per day. And then we can upgrade it in stages, which Marc-André can go into details for as little as, $3 to $5 million to get it to a level where we can get to the rates that he just mentioned, and then potentially higher.
Mm-hmm.
So just a question on the mill, because you guys did mention that permitting it to 1,800 tons per day, you guys would be looking at a more streamlined process. What does that process look like? Could you just give us some color?
We have made some really good improvement, some really good work in the last couple of months in terms of permitting. Just a couple of months ago, we made the decision to shut down the underground infrastructures at Bachelor, the underground, the Bachelor mine. And our intention was, first of all, cost-saving initiatives. We think we can save about $3 million a year just by doing that. That has been completed by then. But in the initial permitting request, there was some feed coming up from the Bachelor Moroy deposit. And because of shutting down the underground infrastructure, we had to revise the scope for permitting. And that had reduced the original throughput that was 2,400 tons a day down to 1,800 tons per day. So that's where that 1,800 tons per day comes from. We recently changed the scope to the COMEX, and we have answered back our second stage of questions. So the way it works, Victoria, in Quebec, there's a 2,000 ton per day threshold.
Okay.
So if you go above 2,000 ton per day, it means that you will have to go an impact study and public hearing. When your request is below 2,000 ton per day, then the impact study, we already did it. So for Bonterra, doesn't really make any difference because we did the impact study when we were asking for 2,400 tons per day.
Mm-hmm.
But at 1,800 tons per day, there's no impact study required. So we may not get any further questions based on the impact study. And the public hearing may not be required. So that's what it means at a more streamlined process.
Okay.
The scope of work is much easier now with 100% of the feed from the Barry underground and Barry pit ore. So it makes things much simpler for the regulators.
Right. And then all of the infill drilling that you guys are going to be completing, how many more meters are needed total, and how long do you guys think this will take?
Yes, we plan for 125,000 meters total. We're at year end now, we think we're going to be around 30,000 meters. So that brings about 90 to 100,000 meters to go. Of course, those meters are approximate, it depends on your drill intersects. But in our plan, we plan to continue infill drilling all year next year. So it's going to be between 60 to 70,000 meters next year. We are going to evaluate our progress on an ongoing basis. Readjust the program accordingly. And since we do have our own resource geologists now, we were able to follow our progress and figure out how when it's going to be the right time to proceed to a mineral resource estimate. So it could happen by the end of next year. It could happen at that time.
And then in regards to Barry, what should investors be watching for as you guys kind of make this progress going forward?
Like I said, there's definitively gold on the ground there. You can see it in our last release. You can expect more good news on hits at Barry. We are working on cost-saving initiatives. We really want to spend our money wisely, and certainly don't want to waste the money. So we have a couple of cost-saving initiatives ongoing that we'll be very happy to share with the market once we make some good progress on that aspect.
And then just a question asking, how do you guys plan to capitalize the Barry underground to be able to put it into production, and just asking about, your current treasury and balance sheet?
Yeah, I can take that question. The answer is one step at a time. So right now we're doing infill drilling, and that will require funding. We have close to $10 million Canadian of cash on hand, thanks to a refund on taxes that was due to us. We got an advance on that, so that bolstered the balance sheet before the end of the year. And Quebec, has its pluses and minuses. One of the minuses right now is that labor is very tight and expensive, and contractor availability as well. But one of the pluses is that they offer amazing flow through funding schemes. And the premiums for flow through are very high right now, so we can raise capital at a high premium to our share price, and we will take advantage of that to fund what we can fund on the exploration front, including some of the infill. And as I said, one step at a time. We will put the data together and determine what the economics are of the project, and then go out and solicit funding for that project. If for whatever reason there's a scenario where that the economics are not robust, then we can also make decisions at that point in time. But we're not committed to anything right now. We're still in a phase of learning what we actually have, refining what we have. Marc-André has built many mines. I don't think in environments as challenging as this, but it's never easy. I've been part of two projects in Latin America, in Mexico and in Nicaragua. There was nothing easy about those two. I don't think that any mining operation is ever easy, but we have people with a lot of expertise, namely Marc-André, and we will proceed, one step at a time.
And then would you be able to provide a little bit of an update on the drilling at Gladiator? I think you guys were, drilling a little bit over the summer.
Yes, we've done some drilling this summer on the barges on the lake. the campaign ended at the end of July. We still have some assays pending from that campaign. There's been some delay at our lab because of summer vacations and all that. And so we're still in the process to get some assays results back from that campaign. So our plan was to gather all the data, all the recent information, update our wireframes, and basically look at we're putting an exploration program maybe for next year. By the meantime, we are still working on the exploration ramp.
Yeah.
As you know, the deposit is under a lake. We're limited for drilling there. And we believe the best approach for that deposit would be to develop an incline. So we have a design done. We've been working on the surface infrastructures because it's virgin ground there. There's only an exploration camp. There's basically nothing. We are finalizing working on the budget for this scope. That should be done by the end of this year. And at the same time, we are advancing the permitting. We did get some really good news from COMEX that there's no impacts that they required for this type of project. So our next step is to finalize the detailed engineering and then move to the provincial regulators. At the same time, we started working on what we call the environmental baseline. So you need those kind of data, to know the environment before the project and the impact of the project and the mitigation measures. So we are working on the environmental baseline, which is very important as well. So we were still working on Gladiator, so quite active. And again, once we have the budget completed, we will have to sit down and find out what would be the best approach to move this project ahead.
And then I just had a question too, I guess, on, the funding side. You guys talked about you taking it step by step. You guys also have, an asset portfolio with a fair bit of optionality. Is there anything that you guys would look to maybe divest of or change up on this front?
We have some joint ventures with some other mining company. And there's always a possibility that, for them, they share some of our exploration costs as part of the GV. So that is one thing that we are looking at like now for next year.
Yeah, well, that project that Marc-André is referring to is the Duke property. We have a JV with our neighbor, Cisco Mining, who has access to quite a bit of capital and is a very good exploration team there. We haven't, we are open to doing business with whoever on terms that make sense. In the past, we've been offered joint ventures, as people know, and I see there's a question in the queue. We've been offered to sell the company at levels that are higher than our share prices today. I will remind people that was an all-share transaction. At least that was the proposal, with a very short fuse, and in the middle of us completing a financing where if we did not complete that financing, we would have very little cash and would be in no position to actually negotiate what we thought would be more fair terms on that deal. So, a very opportunistic bid. So with regards to that question about, how do we feel? We had an offer in November of 2020. I joined the board of this company in April of 2020 and spent a lot of time restructuring the company. It would have been easy to take that exit and move on. Trust me, I thought about it and we discussed it as a board and with the largest shareholder. But there is so much value that that can be realized from the assets that we have, especially now that we have Marc-André at the helm to help us make the right decisions, to not fall into the same traps that other companies have fallen into. And luckily for us, our largest shareholder, very large investor out of the US, who has the patience to see things through. I've worked there almost 14 years. I'm no longer officially affiliated with that organization, with Wexford, but I still have a relationship with the founder, with one of the co-founders, and they have capital that they want to deploy. Quebec is a great place to make long-term investments in, and we have a big endowment of gold with a lot more that is going to be discovered at some point in time, and this is a long game. And you don't hear very many complaints when gold's flying and everyone's making money. You only hear them when times are tough, but these are actually the best times to be investing. Marc-André and I collectively have acquired over 1 million shares of Bonterra this year, and at much higher prices. I wish we had waited, but we were, the momentum of the company was such that we thought we were going to move from a PEA to PFS on the open pit and get that up and running. And then things changed dramatically for everyone in the world. If you were to call somebody at Apple, the largest company on the planet, and ask them about their sales, they'd say, well, we thought we were going to do this, but there's some civil unrest at our largest manufacturing hubs in China, and so we're not. It's affecting the largest of the large, and it's definitely affecting us, who are small players in the grand scheme of things. And so we are going to be, we're going to be nimble. We're going to make the right decisions. We have the right people. We have the right backers. But it is a long game. It is not a short game that we are playing.
Great. Well, you answered all the audience questions that were in the queue. So I do just want to remind the audience, if you do have any last questions, you can just put them in the Q&A. I guess, are there any last words that you guys would like to leave everyone with? And I do really appreciate you guys, coming on here and giving us the time today to walk through the release and, just clarify your strategy moving forward. It's been really helpful.
Our strategy is to move the Barry deposit to the production level. We took our responsibility as a company and paused the PFS on the Barry open pit project, which was a very small portion of the deposit. Since last August, we've been focusing on diamond drilling the underground portion of the deposit, the upper half, and our main focus is now, to look at the combination of maybe an open pit and an underground, or, as the underground will ramp up, get some of the feed from the pit, and then eventually feed the mill with 100% of the berry. For that, we need to drill. We started last August. We're going to continue to drill, and stay tuned on some of the drill results that will come. I think, we're taking the right decision in the current market, and I think there's going to be some really good news about Bonterra in the next few months.
Adding to that, Bonterra is a small company with a relatively tight shareholder base. We have some chunky shareholders, and when one of them decides to sell, or anybody for that matter, it creates pressure on the stock. The level that the stock needs to go to clear. Obviously, we're seeing those levels now. New people are buying, and good for them, because they're getting in at levels that, Marc-André and I joked the other day, I wish we could predict the future and knew all these things. I mean, had we been able to predict that, we probably would have done things differently. We do have some dry powder to acquire more stock, and we'll be doing so. But we obviously can do it while we're in possession of material non-public information, even though that information was negative in nature. For example, the pausing of the PFS, we still had to wait. We do plan to acquire more shares, but it's a long game, as I mentioned earlier. And one thing that the founder of Wexford reminded me of years ago is, those who know it best appreciate it least. And right now we have a lot of shareholders who have been in the name for a long time, who know the mining space, who are probably too long on junior gold miners, myself included. And we we probably think that it's never going to get better again, that it's really bad and it's just a lost cause, but it isn't. And I luckily have friends and contacts in other industries who have made quite a bit of money in real estate and in tech. And they are quite excited about getting into our industry because it is so beaten up. And that's how these cycles work, is that you bring in new money who is excited about what they see, a company with bright prospects, with good management in a tier 1 jurisdiction that is being priced at a very, very low level. So I would just encourage some of the longer term shareholders to take a step back and, come at this with a fresh set of eyes. Don't get so mired in the past and the losses. We're there, right there with you. And trust me, it's taken a while to turn this company around, but I'm very proud about where it is today. And I think the prospects going forward are going to be rewarding for people who get involved at these levels.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Cesar, and thank you, Marc-André. We really appreciate it. Thanks to the audience for signing on today as well.
Thank you, Victoria.